Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about how much food is too much food for my baby. I hear from a lot of parents that they're worried that their baby is eating too much, especially in the first few months of life when it seems like at first they're just taking a tiny bit and we're perhaps breastfeeding as well, so it's difficult to know how much to get. And this is actually a question that I got on my text messages. If you have a question, you can text me. It's 402 256 0768. The link is down below. But this is a question that I got in. So it's, hello, my 3-month-old just started daycare this week. Before starting, she was eating 4 ounces every 3.5 to 4 hours. On her daily daycare report, she's eating 4 ounces every 1.5 to 2.5 hours. She's at daycare from 7:30 to 5:30 and is having 4 to 5 4-ounce bottles a day. Is she truly needing this much milk? Is this something I should discuss with her daycare? I've increased my pumping at work to keep up with her milk demands, but I'm worried she's eating too much. So, common issue that parents face is going from being at home in those first weeks or months to going to daycare, and then like all of a sudden they're eating differently. And as a general rule, as a broad thing that you're going to see for the next 5, 10, 20 years, is that children eat differently for daycare, for school, for relatives than they do for their own parents. And fast forward 12 months, and you've got a 15-month-old that eats green beans like they're going out of style at daycare, but throws them off her plate or feeds them to the dog at home. Totally normal. And so that's kind of jumping way forward. Now, specifically for this 3-month-old, obviously she's not adjusting how much she eats based on what her friends are doing, because that's really the reason that kids at daycare eat better than they do at home, is because they see their friends doing it as well. A couple of things stick out to me at this. First and foremost is whatever your baby is demanding is normal. I wouldn't worry or get hung up on, is it 18 ounces? Is it 22 or 24 or 30 ounces? If your baby seems hungry and is not spitting up and seems satisfied and is sleeping well, I just say feed the baby what the baby ask for. I don't think you have to get too hung up on specific ounces throughout life. In the first few weeks, we'll kind of make sure that they're getting enough, because sometimes in the first few weeks of life, babies will get quite sleepy if they're not fed enough, and parents think, well, they're just a great baby, a great sleeper, but it's just because they don't have enough calories on board, so they're tired and don't eat well. And that's why we do a lot of visits in the first few weeks, just to make sure we're growing, we're feeding appropriately, we're sleeping appropriately, all those things. At 3 months of age, I would just take her cues and take her feeding schedule as what she needs. Sometimes you'll see baby takes 18 ounces per day in times when they're not really growing, or they're just not requiring or demanding as much, or the milk that you're producing perhaps is more calorie dense, and so they just don't need as much. And then sometimes they'll be going through a growth spurt, or maybe daycare has a specific feeding schedule so that they can accommodate the other kids' schedules, and they're feeding a little bit more frequently or a little bit more, something like that. I wouldn't get too hung up on the specifics of that. If baby is healthy, happy, and growing, and not spitting up, and otherwise not fussy or anything like that, then I wouldn't mess with, tinker, or try and minutely adjust any sort of specifics of the amount of ounces. Now, to step back and say, how many ounces does a baby that's 3 months old need? If we look, and I'll just kind of walk through the first 6 months of life in terms of ounces. And hey, as I'm mentally preparing to do this, if this video is helpful for you, would you just take a second and like the video, because it really helps me to get it in front of more people so that more people can benefit, if you just hit the like button. Now, you can share it with a friend if you think there's a friend, or share it with your newsfeed or wherever you are, but at least a like would really help me out, so thank you. In terms of the ounces and when to expect baby to go up in ounces, I think that most babies in the first month of life take about anywhere from 18 to 28 ounces per day. And we really kind of think of that on an hourly basis. So about an ounce an hour is kind of a rough frame of reference. In the first few days and weeks, it's not that much, but by a 1-month-old is probably taking about 24 ounces of breast milk or formula per day. It can vary dramatically, and parents often get hung up on the numbers because you got all these, special apps and things where you can check and monitor, and you can do the up and down and how much did they take yesterday compared to today and how much was this feeding. Click comment below yes if that's you. And like, it's just nice to have data, but sometimes the data can make it seem like we're doing something wrong if it's not as good as yesterday, or it's not the exact same as the day before. But I think around an ounce a day, and that's another reason that we check frequently, is because some babies only need 16 or 18 ounces per day. Some need 30 ounces per day to grow appropriately, and that's why we do frequent checkups to make sure, hey, I hear what you're feeding. Is that sufficient? The vast majority of the time it is, but that's why we kind of keep a close eye and check on those things as we go. Now, 2 months to 3 month olds, I see them taking more. Sometimes babies will take 2 ounces, sometimes babies will take 4 ounces. It kind of escalates rather quickly from there, where they'll go from an ounce an hour, or small feedings frequently, to larger feedings more frequently. And what I see when I hear and talk with 2 month old parents is they typically take anywhere from 2 to 4 ounces per feeding, and that's every 2 to 3 hours. And then 3 month olds along the same line. Sometimes they take 2 to 5 ounces every 2 to 3 hours. In that 4 to 6 month range, you'll start to see them space out feedings and do larger volumes, and that's just nice, and makes it easier for parents, especially with moms often returning to work. Is they'll take longer breaks in between feeding and do longer stretches as their stomach grows to accommodate, and they continue to utilize all of those calories. I think in general, I find that parents tend to worry that their baby isn't getting enough, when if they're growing fine and they're at where they're at on the growth chart, and they're keeping pretty similar percentiles from visit to visit, then I don't worry about it, and I don't get hung up in the specifics, and I don't try and tinker very much, because baby will tell you what she needs best. And so I typically just let babies be, and unless there's something serious going on, they're dropping off the percentiles, or something along those lines, then I'm not one to tinker with what baby knows, because baby does know best what she needs, and she'll tell you, if you watch for the cues and then adjust accordingly. Now, parents also wonder, when can we go up on feedings? Well, the clues to me that we're ready to go up on feedings are, we're finishing our feeding every time in terms of bottles, like we just pound down every bottle, there's not a drop left, so we still seem hungry. And then we're going shorter periods of time between feedings. So it seems like we're needing to feed more frequently, and she's finishing off every bottle, or she's probably just hungry, and you can just go up on the ounces as you see fit. If you overshoot, if you go from 2 to 5 ounces, she'll probably not take it all and probably will spit up more, just because that's a lot of volume to go. So I tell parents to typically go about an ounce per escalation and see how that goes. If all of a sudden we go up and then we're spitting up a lot more, it's probably just a volume thing, and then just go back down by half an ounce. But I find that parents are pretty good at, once they figure out, okay, we can actually feed more, then they go up quite quickly and find that baby tolerates that quite well. I hope that's helpful. I hope that answered your question. Again, if you haven't hit like, that would just mean the world to me if you would just click the like button right below there. And then if there's somebody that you think would benefit from it, feel free to share. And if you have a question, this question came straight from my text messages. So if you have a question, you can just text me. It's 402-256-0768. I love answering these questions. It's easiest on me if I don't have to come up with the material. If you just text me, then I'll have material to cover. Keep up the good work.